Hey, Jay.
Hey, want a bar?
How many grams of protein, carb, and fat
I
are in
have
here?
absolutely no idea.
I don't know if it's going to fit my macros.
That sounds like a myth we need to bust.
So James, if it fits your macros, popular way for people to control the amounts of carbs, proteins, fats that they're getting in their diet. Could you give us like a bit of an explanation of what the protocol is and why people follow it?
Actually, I can't give a really detailed explanation, and I would hesitant to say if it fits your macros is something we should classify as being there. If we can go more, I guess, 20,000 foot view and say just macros conversation. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm not going to say that I would know the exact details, and I'd hesitate to get some of that wrong that allows some disparity in the conversation. Does that make sense?
I think that
So
allows us to talk not just about like, the idea of eating Pop-Tarts and it being a certain amount of calories, but actually looking broader.
Yeah, so the concept of it is that the numbers matter a lot, which they do. And there's other things that come with that, but that's the conceptual idea, that the balance of these specific macronutrients at a level in which people understand proteins, fats, and carbs, and the balancing of those and how much you have of those, and that tying into the energy equation in totality, that's the direction that moves. So if you indirectly asked me this off screen, but I'll answer it. Where does it come from? It's always been there. So since science investigated kilocalories and looking at energy of food and physical activity levels versus how much people do during the day, etc., it's always been there. It's just that with the information age and broadcasting what you know and everyone being a part of the thing now, you can see it just gets mumbled into this, honestly, an ideology and a belief system and a silo. For some good intentions, but then it leads people astray in others, and I think that's why we're discussing it today. Yeah,
so before we get to busting the notion that macros is, the thing that matters in nutrition, let's talk about why they do matter, because you did mention that initially. Yeah. What are some of the positives of thinking in terms of macros?
Yeah, well, they're extremely important for numbers and truths, like you're either eating 3,000 calories or you're not, It also speaks to science and data, which is really important in trying to discover some truths in terms of exercise and fitness. And I like to say that they are a part of the idea is a stepwise process in getting to a higher order concept of autonomy for nutrition. So that's a positive aspect, and I would even argue to say that I do believe, like we teach coaches, you should go through that route with clients, right? There is a part of the process that you. So that's a big one. There is like it's a part of the journey to get to this aspect of autonomy for nutrition.
Okay, so counting macros, tracking your protein, carbs, and fats could be a useful tool for someone that is progressing from no nutrition knowledge to the point where they wake up and they know exactly what they need to do without someone telling them what to do.
Well, I would say our language needs to shift into that and say it's not one of the tools, because that allows options. It is a tool that should be used in the journey. Do you see that? So now it's continuity, and you're pulling all things together that are going to be helpful to move the person towards that. So I'm saying it is that. The myth we're trying to bust is that it's the answer. Well, no, it's a part of the equation. Change the language changes the perception of it.
So why do you think people think that macros are the answer?
Well, it's numbers, and it's very easy to sell numbers. And so if you just that's all you mention is the science, then that's easy to sell. It's a hard conversation to dive into behaviors and where that fits in. It's a hard conversation to discuss potential, like human potential. And so I think it's just that's the main reasons why it's pushed really hard.
So it's
You can offer, you can just think about that. You can offer scientific evidence on top of it. You can create, really controlled variables, But I think it misses out on some big aspects of artistry and we could say it a more of a fluid concept of what goes into helping people with their nutrition,
That makes sense. So it's simpler for a coach to prescribe
Yes,
numbers
that's another good one. It's simple,
to dig into what are some of the things that go into artistry.
Yeah. Oh, the artistry
Yeah.
is, I just mentioned them, is humans are complex. And we're adaptive. And because we are adaptive, then we have to set humans in the right path, right? So if we set them in the wrong path and they're adaptive, they're going to adapt to the wrong things, if that makes sense. This aspect of behavior, I believe, is really important because when we make a prescription, I'm not too concerned around a 6-month weight distribution change. I think in terms of decades for that person. And so intentions really matter. Intentions really matter. I would argue more so than the exact numbers. So these are the complexities of what you get into. It's behaviors, trying to understand intentions, it's the real reason why you're doing it, etc.
Yeah.
And it can't always lend to we're going to lose weight and therefore it's these numbers that'll get you there. Well, that's a part of the conversation. Yeah.
One of the places I've seen coaches and then their clients get tripped up is the idea that the intention is to hit, 200 grams of carbs, 150 grams of protein, 70 grams of fat. They see that as the intention, whereas the intention really is to...
No, that's part of the journey.
That's the journey. The intention is to have great mental acuity, to have great function, to live large and long, right?
Yeah, this has to be stretched out. This has to be discussion on this, which is the aspect why we love coaching, right? It's we don't always have the answer to it, but we don't turn our back on these conversations. So I always drop some to give people ideas of what they could chew on for intentions. Maybe we have intentions around the highest cognition possible for as long as possible. So we talk about mental acuity. Maybe the intentions around everything that ends up being your 200 grams of protein a day is based upon allowing you to express yourself physically for as long as possible and as best as possible for your entire life. And then lastly, an intention of what we call living the most expressive, we get really jazzed up here about that, right? Living the large life, which is potential. Every human has an opportunity for potential that we should strive after every day. And that's what you should be going after. And we stop short at this mediocrity concept of just getting by and just doing what you need to do. So cognition, locomotion, and this concept of resilience for a long period of time.
And how eating certain foods in certain amounts can
ties
lead
into
to them.
that.
Yeah.
So that every decision they then make is not based upon grams. It's not based upon, will this make me fat? It's not based upon, will this fit my macros? You see, that can be a part of the process. And let's be honest, sometimes it takes years to develop that conversation. But, it's a whole other conversation another time. We don't have the systems and institutions set up for coaches to have these conversations with people. So we stop short at what? Numbers. And then I'm out. Just follow the numbers. And the human leaves going, there's something more to that. And then now we've created entire groups and organizations and actual people that come in, and that's all we jam on is rehabilitative concepts to fix the issue. Oh, well, you're just effing up your tracking because research shows that. This is where we go with it. So instead, why don't we just back the fuck up and just say, well, why are we putting information in our mouth? How about that one? And then we can, get into deeper level things which are good about sourcing foods and the concept, which are good, challenging ideas on quality versus quantity and type and kind and timing and all those great things, which I get excited about.
So those
are good challenges.
Yeah, the myth we're busting today isn't the idea that coaches shouldn't use macros with their clients. It's
I hope you heard that it's a part of the process.
Yeah, they just have to be tied to something bigger than just the macro,
Yeah,
just the number.
yeah. I think we're asking coaches to work harder, which is challenging, right? On trying to come up with conversations around intentions. That's what we're asking.
Yeah.
And this is the great thing. You can have your cake and eat it too on this concept. You know, I shouldn't use that as an analogy.
I think that's what we're trying to avoid, right?
But you can. Meaning you can still provide macros, right? But if it's on a base support where people know why they're doing it, and that concept helps support people move in the right direction, then we jump over this bullshit silo cornered argument on who's right and who's wrong, and it doesn't allow ideology to play, you know. And clients shouldn't have access to that bullshit. Like, clients shouldn't feel any of our shit that we got going on amongst coaching and nutrition chatter, you know. What they should be like is having a mentor in front of them and someone that they can see as a role model who believes in, you know, asking hard questions on intentions of food.
Yeah, and not just selling them a certain way of doing something.
Yeah, because you're not challenging the whole reason why we get into fitness, really. You know, you're doing us a disservice, is dropping your value as a coach, and that seeps out. And then the client's like, oh, the answer is just macros. It's like, well, it's not the only answer. There's a lot more, you know.
Yeah. So macros are the tool that a coach can use to help a client
Yes.
create some understanding and awareness
Yeah,
around
think
quantity.
of it as science. That's probably where we should language it, is like,
Yeah.
use it as science.
Yeah.
Use the science to help you. But there's artistry. And we call artistry basic lifestyle guidelines.
Yeah, okay.
Behaviors, lifestyle, and putting it all together.
Science and tools can be misapplied and abused, though.
For sure.
So where do you see that happening with macros? Like, what are some of the bad applications of macro coaching that are causing issues?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to think, is it anything dissimilar to what we already talked about? It's not. It's just people applying it without concepts of intention and applying it thinking that the system is a very controllable system.
Yeah.
You know? Where it's just like, oh, you know, food's just information, just put it in and do this, energy in, energy out, voila, you know. That might work, but there's complexity inside that human, and you know, and the more experiences you have, that's the greatest thing as coaches. You know, you deal with a 14-year-old with an eating disorder, and then you deal with a young 18-year-old rough and tumble human, and you deal with a 67-year-old who's been having diarrhea for 20 years, you know, and didn't mention it. And so you really think that just there's going to be answers applied that are really simple and science based upon that? No, it's not. So it doesn't take us away from the fact that science is still a base support, but you have to create some human color and language to that.
Yeah, and some of the common things I see in clients and in, you know, application of macros by coaches that are potentially problematic do come back to what you laid out, which is just a lack of intention. So, for example, the client that eats the same thing over and over and over again because it fits their macros, because they don't have awareness and understanding around, you know, variety as being one of those important things that will help them have great acuity and function and longevity.
Yeah.
Perhaps it is, you know, again, the client who thinks that tracking numbers is like the be all end all, and they have a lot of stress and anxiety around that because they don't understand that macros aren't their purpose. It's their life beyond that's their purpose. So it always does come back to just making sure intentions are lined up.
Yeah, because even if you got into the conversation to say down the road, you get to those areas of just issues. If you've, you know, with forethought and previous in the conversation and relationship you've been building, you have those conversations on intentions, then now you see you got a feedback loop to go back to, right? Because humans will do that. I mean, it's just, you know, we're trying to be adaptive, we're trying to do things better, you know? And so over time, let's say someone goes, you know, in an area where it becomes stressful and anxious to their food, which is, just take a moment to think about that. That's really unfortunate that humans have to experience those things. Just think about that for a second. Of the tens of thousands of people that experience that, right? It's really sad, actually. But that can be changed if they have something to go back on, that they're like, yeah, I remember you discussing that. So now let's get back to center on, well, what is the biggest intentions here, Lisa? You know, like, what's really the deepest intentions? Let's go back to that. And then Lisa goes, oh yeah, I just lost my way. I thought that this was going to be the, and then you center her, and then now she's like, you know what? I'm going to choose some different greens this week. And that's the steps forward, right? Maybe it still fits into the macro profile, but it's you're offering this like feedback loop of what really matters for it. So yeah, I hope you know, that kind of conceptual story can make people understand that it has to be congruent, work together.
Are there any areas that you think a coach should look at before they begin discussing macros with their clients?
That's a softball. Yes, I was just trying to think, you know, maybe there's something different to that. So I tried to think of it as like, I'm not James CCP instructor, right? And that's why I took a brief moment, because it would be simple that, yeah, I'm on firm ground when I make the comment that the basic lifestyle guidelines are something that coaches should be the first thing you embark on, before you get to that. And that's, to be really simple, those are just natural concepts that we are all a part of, that we have to abide by and listen to and respect. Concepts of rhythm and consistency and awareness around self-care, and that'll start setting the tone for getting into the scientific aspect of numbers around macros.
Yeah, so to kind of wrap it up, the myth we're busting today, again, isn't that macros are a thing. They are. Macros are science.
Yeah.
Macronutrients exist. You are going to eat certain amounts of protein, carb, and fat.
Yes.
And macros is a great tool that coaches can use with their clients to help them develop awareness around how much they're eating.
Yes.
It's not the only tool.
No.
And it's one that can't be applied without intention. And that is really what we're busting. The
Yes.
notion of numbers without intention behind them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Couldn't say it any better.